Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Good afternoon, viewers. You're welcome to the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live chat program. They call it ISK Live Chat. My name is Ibrahim Mwadhane. Mwadhane is a practicing licensed surveyor. There before I worked with the Ministry of Lands, before I went into the private sector. I also do quite a lot of work in land governance within and outside the country, and therefore naturally lean towards the subject that I am going to address today, which is corruption in the land sector and how to mitigate it. We will be doing part 2 of this discussion. Part 1 was done last Friday, within which we discussed matters to do with how you can enhance transparency in the corruption sector, in the land sector, with a view to reducing corruption. Let me also add, I think for some of the viewers, listeners who may not know me, that I am also a past chair of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. I did the leg 2002, 2003 to 2004, 2005. That was quite a while back. When this country was busy trying to get to discuss issues that forend the constitution and the policy. In another capacity, I chair the Land Development and Governance Institute. We call it LDGI in short, which basically focuses on matters of policy, formulation, legal enactment, practice in the land sector, and also issues of the implementation of policy and legal frameworks. So today we want to carry on with part 2 of our discussion on corruption. When we were opening that discussion last week, I indicated that it is a subject that a lot of people tend to avoid, but I did indicate that in my view, it is probably the discussion we must try not to avoid, because many times we do quite a lot of work, but because of the threat of corruption within our practicing environments, often we don't get the results we intended. When we do get, we get them late. Sometimes we get them completely corrupted. So it is important for us as professionals and also citizens to try and embrace the discussion on corruption sector by sector and see how best to bring it down within our circumstances. And as we get on with this discussion, I want to encourage viewers to keep sharing their views and questions or feedback on whatever we are discussing on the comment section. On the bar that is scrolling below your screen, you'll be able to see it where there are some comments from ISK and some contacts that are provided there. Please feel free to share your questions or feedback or any views that you feel you may wish to share. So let's get into part 2 of this discussion. Remember, in part 1, we indicated that technology plays a very vital role in reducing corruption. Why? Because it does enhance transparency and efficiency. In so doing, you reduce a lot of human interface. And when you reduce human interface, you also, in a proportionate manner, reduce opportunities for rent seeking. But we pointed out that during that discussion that you still have a challenge even if you are the best of technology-driven systems, technology-driven land administration systems, because those systems are driven by people and several things could happen, and we looked at some of them. And therefore, you realize that you need a little more beyond getting technology to drive your systems. And we had observed at the beginning that some of the other things that you need to do to ensure that you reduce corruption in your working environment include enhancing the integrity of the people who work within a technical process within some institution. Enhancing the level of accountability where everybody is held accountable for the things that they do within an institution. So today we want to get a little deep into these areas and we want to look at them in regard to the institutions that ordinarily play out and the ones that whose inputs would contribute a great deal to enhancing integrity and enhancing transparency in the land sector. Now, we had indicated that one of the institutions that we would wish to talk about and their role in this regard are universities and other higher level training institutions. Now, why do we bring in the universities and other higher level training institutions? Because most of the professionals who are driving the land sector in Kenya, just like in the rest of Africa, have their entry point from the higher level training institutions and the universities after they finish with their secondary school education. So this is a very useful area within which to come into the life of a budding professional. And what we want to observe for universities and those training institutions is that it is useful to realize that when you look at the cycle of what has been happening around Africa, and indeed our country, before and just after independence, a lot of countries, ours included, were very keen on defining land for purposes of registration for the people who had colonized our countries. They needed to be able to own land with confidence, so they needed to know what size it is, what value it is in many cases, and thereafter ensure that they have a registrable interest. So it's a little wonder that therefore the courses that seem to have been at play at that particular time included the courses that help you to define land, which is basically to measure land, which is the surveying sciences, and the courses that also help you to determine the value of land, which are the valuation sciences, the land economics, and general land administration. Then the courses that would have enabled one to ensure that the interest as defined by a surveyor, whose value is quantified by a valuer, would be registrable, so that one therefore can hold it without feeling like they have the threat or ambiguity in the holding of that kind of land. Of course, beyond those three, we were quite common. We had the common science of planning, or art of planning, which was basically used to engage matters of rural and urban planning. So in that time, it was very common to find that the courses you'd find in universities and other training institutions included planning, surveying, law, land management, and economics. And they remain still relevant to date, because we still do need to know what size, what measurement, what value, register and manage land. But the needs in Africa have been changing beyond just defining and registering land. We have a whole set of needs that have come into place for this country and for Africa in general that require that you go beyond the traditional technical courses. A number of soft skills are now necessary to be able to do business. And you notice these skills include things like communication, effective communication. That's extremely useful. And the whole aspect of gendering land, being conscious about the fact that when you hold land, you need to be aware that across the world we are talking about the need for being responsive to gender equity. But more importantly, because there's a whole set of soft skills that are recommended, and I would recommend that those who want to know a bit of the extras that would be required beyond the technical courses, have a look at the guidelines for curricular development that were developed at the Africa Union level. They will help somebody, particularly those people in university, to be able to appreciate the set of soft skills that are recommended for institutions of higher learning in land governance and the universities. But more importantly, it does bring out also the need for professional ethics. A deepening of ethics in the training of graduates and students in training institutions. And in doing so, it is important for universities and training institutions to get students to understand that beyond their technical capacities, a lot of their success once out in industry, serving either at local level, at regional level, or national level, or even international level, the aspect of professional ethics and things like honesty, tenets like honesty, accountability, and effective professional networkings, because you don't work in an island, because you cannot also have a monopoly of all the skills, is so critical that you need to get the graduates, the people who are going to get out of those institutions, to appreciate at a very early stage. And the beauty is that if they appreciate them early, they carry them through much more effectively. Even when there are temptations, the information lingers. The problem is if there has been a gap in getting them to appreciate that ethics, in professional ethics and integrity, is critical. When you do measurements, when you do register land, it's so important for you to be honest about what was the measurement that you picked out. What was the detail of the person to whom you are supposed to register the property? The fact that when you are the one who submit the work, you must be held accountable to the accuracy of the record. And the moment that is drilled effectively, it stays with the student. So we would want to encourage the universities in particular to also remember, besides tooling the young graduates as they come through the institutions, that there's a whole body of practicing professionals that are out here who are, who require with time a bit of what we call retooling. It's like after every short period, you can give them a bit of refresher information on some of these things. And in shaping short courses, obviously, which probably can speak to things like new technology, new policies and laws, ethics would be one of the modules that would constantly be belabored in those short courses. So that besides tooling the young graduates who are passing through those institutions, we can also have an interplay, a reach out to the older practicing professionals in industry, so that this refreshing on the matter of ethics remains an area where you have currency through each and every period. Now, the other institution that can play a very critical role in enhancing professional integrity are professional associations. And when we talk about professional associations, it is important to appreciate that the land sector is home to several professional associations. Obviously, the first one that we know is the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, the one that facilitates this live chat. We also have the valuers, not the valuers, but the planners institute. We have the Law Society of Kenya. I think if you go down the line, you'll pick out a few other associations whose contributions do affect the land sector. So these associations are very critical vehicles for the entry of the graduates from the universities, because once out of the universities, every graduate wishes to belong to a professional association which speaks to their area of interest or expertise. You will notice that people who want to be valuers, surveyors, building surveyors, and land management surveyors will want to associate with ISK. And those people who are in the legal legal profession will want to belong to the Law Society of Kenya. And those who are keen on planning will want to be members of the Kenya Institute of Planners. So these institutions stand very uniquely and are very, very well placed to influence the integrity, the professional integrity of professionals. Although they basically have a role to speak to the welfare of professionals, they are also very, very, very influential in the career progression of professionals, and usually are guided by very clear codes of conduct, which bind members. So therefore, for that reason, and a lot of what they do, including organizing continuous professional development for professionals, a lot of what they do, if well done, can shape and act as a constant reminder to professionals that ethics and integrity are critical for land governance. You drop those, it doesn't matter your level of technology, you will begin to have issues like we discussed in part one. So what are some of the things that professional associations could do to encourage professionals to keep on track? Some of these include recognizing those professionals that seem to have a very, very, very high and I would say clear track in adhering to ethics and integrity when they do the course that they do, the work that they do. There are certainly many of these kind of professionals, and it is incumbent upon the leadership of professional associations to find out how it can recognize and reward such professionals. And sometimes professionals do not require to be rewarded in any serious manner, probably just a certificate, probably just a mention in one of the forums that are held in the many events that professionals hold annually. One of the other things that could be helpful in encouraging professionals to keep fidelity to professional ethics and integrity include the business of censoring. Indeed, if you are not pursuing a professional track, it is important for the professional association to have a mechanism of telling you, no, excuse me, valuer so-and-so, surveyor so-and-so, building surveyor so-and-so, I think land management surveyor so-and-so, we have a problem here. And we have got this, we have got that, and we think it could be different. So various institutions, various associations have, besides a code of conduct, I know they have committees that attend to issues of discipline. I keep saying part of the problem is that it's normally very, very difficult. We've got an alliance within professionals where you feel like it's very painful to have to caution or to reprimand a fellow colleague when they get off track, because you there's always this fear that tomorrow it could be you. But unfortunately, colleagues, the reality is that when we don't do it, you leave a whole area open to the damning of your professional discipline by society. It's a very difficult, it's like being between a hard surface and a rock. You don't do it, society is watching, and you've noticed it many times. When society looks at the things professionals are doing in various disciplines, they seem to be very, very happy and responsive if they think you take charge and are able to reprimand, censor, suspend, or even expel people who completely go on the total breach members. It is painful, and I must commend the associations that are able to do that occasionally, because it's very painful to reprimand a colleague when they get out of what you call your professional code of conduct. But the penalty of not doing it comes gradually. It's very silent, but it could, with time, create a very major public perception that an association should not be taken seriously. So it does pay, however painful, for associations to take their time and ensure that they constantly attend to matters of professional integrity and the discipline of their membership as much as possible. What are the other things that professional associations could do to ensure that this subject of professional integrity and conduct is kept in track? The frequent refrain to this subject in forums. The forums, the event that professionals hold, can always have an element of probably some speech from some of the members or some guest speaker on the subject. And one would encourage particularly the professional associations to particularly consider the possibility of holding such forums with the respective regulatory agencies. What do I mean? If, for instance, you want to pass that kind of a message for ISK, ensure that besides the association members, you bring in the membership or the officials of the Land Surveyors Board, bring in some officials from the Valuers Registration Board, bring in officials from the Building Surveyors Registration Board, so that you have a mix of both. Because when you speak to the two, you speak to two platforms that have a lot of influence on the practice of professionals. So those are some of the things that professional associations can be able to try out when they are doing their stuff. And in my view, I put it very lightly because it's a sensitive subject, so I don't want to look like it's using a hammer on it. But it is one very major entry point that professional associations can use to speak to the issue of corruption, because if you constantly rein your membership, by implication, you influence conduct in government and you also influence conduct in the private sector. So let associations take the challenge and, as best possible, keep urging their members to play within professional integrity and ethics for purposes of ensuring the land sector is kept as enabling as is possible. So as we get into the next discussion that focuses on the regulatory agencies themselves, I've done a little mention to them. Let me remind members that we are on the ISK live chat. Normally happens on Friday afternoons from between 2 and 4 p.m. My name is Ibrahim Wadane. I said I'm a surveyor. I take a lot of interest on matters of land governance. I'm a past chair of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. And we encourage members to keep sharing their views, their questions, and any feedback. At the bottom of your screen, you can see some bars scrolling with a lot of contacts for Twitter, for Facebook, for WhatsApp, email. Please share your thoughts and views over the subject that we are discussing, so that the ISK may be able also to get back to you on the issues that are of concern to you. So, what are these regulatory agencies? Regulatory agencies in this country normally have statutory power. They are anchored in law. So they are fairly authoritative organs of state, and they ordinarily will deal with matters of admission of professionals into professional practice. So if you are a surveyor and you want to practice within Kenya, you realize that you will not do so, particularly for title survey, if you have not been registered by admitted and registered by the Land Surveyors Board. If you are valuer, if you haven't been beyond your ISK examinations, if you have not been admitted and registered by the Valuers Registration Board, you will not be able to practice, etc. So these organs admit, they monitor, and they regulate the practicing of professionals within the country. So that states you a lot. They admit, they monitor, and they regulate the practicing of professionals. Therefore, you can easily tell that they pack a lot of authority. They also enforce standards and codes of conduct for professionals. Most of the regulatory agencies, as they register, also operate and have a code of conduct that is clearly known to the respective registered members. In a number of cases, they also collaborate very well with their mother professional associations. For instance, the Land Surveyors Board collaborates very closely with the Institution of Surveyors, and the Valuers Registration Board, and the Building Surveyors Registration Board, and also the Estate Agents Registration Board. That is a relationship that it's like a twin relationship all through time. Now, what can these institutions, these kind of agencies do? Obviously, they have a lot of power that they can flex. If a professional is deemed to play outside their code of conduct, their expectations, it's possible for a regulatory agency to suspend or even completely expel a member. So they do pack a lot of power in this regard. But my observation is that sometimes you do not need to go to the hammer. You probably get stronger when you use the softer approach by doing things like, one, give regular reminders to professionals who are in practice or registered professionals that there are expectations that there are expectations by the regulatory agencies. There are basics expected of them as they practice. Constantly send them the reminder that indeed there's a penalty should one be found wanting, because that helps them to constantly know that somebody is on the watch. It is also possible for, just like I said before, for these agencies to have joint empowerment forums with their respective professional associations. So the Land Surveyors Board can have a joint forum with ISK. The Valuers Registration Board can have a joint forum with the ISK, and within those workshops and seminars, really get to the bottom of discussing the need for professionals to ensure that they do comply with their codes of conduct. It is doable. In addition, it is useful if, particularly in this country, when I look around this country, I see occasionally the medical practitioners and dentists board, registration board, doing forays outside Nairobi, outside the office. And sometimes this visibility helps members of the public to realize that professionals are not like guns on the loose, let loose on the public. It certainly sends a signal that there is accountability. Remember, we are talking about integrity and accountability. There is accountability to the registering body. So visibility in Thika, visibility in Nyeri, visibility in Kisumu, in Mombasa, occasionally would help a lot. And when there, it's possible for this kind of regulatory agencies to to just pre-inform the members within the zone that they would be within a particular area, probably do a simple caucus with them, get a bit of feedback on what happens in the area, rub arouse and create sensitization about the need for everybody to observe ethics and ensure that they report where there are some of them who are going away. Also talk about the quacks who might be within the environment, within the area of operation. So those kind of things would probably create visibility about these agencies and also sensitize the public more when they visit. Circulars to members, practicing members, would probably also constantly be good reminders. One appreciates the challenge that these institutions, these agencies, sometimes do lack technical and financial support, and therefore, it is also good to echo the point that much as we would want to request the ministries, the mother ministries to these agencies, to as much as possible ensure that these agencies are given technical and financial support. But I'll also, on a totally different note, indicate that I think it is still possible to do quite a lot, even with the meager budgets that these institutions do have. Because why? Today, for instance, we are on WhatsApp, we are on email, we have all manner of social media platforms that can reach out to members and the citizenry. And we also have websites. So it's quite possible to engage membership and the citizenry through a mix of innovative approaches that use the available mediums. What begins to take quite a lot of resources is a visit out of the offices. But away from the visit, there's a lot that can be done to sensitize members constantly and engage the public, and also provide information on the websites about some of these things that we are talking about, so that they know that professionals are regulated. Professionals are people who are held accountable beyond their individual selves. So let us use the regulatory agencies to enhance accountability and the integrity of the professionals that are practicing within our spaces, because it ultimately has the net effect of improving our practices, our service delivery in the land sector. I think beyond the professional agencies, the regulatory agencies, the other body that we would want to talk about are the people who we call in to investigate. So remember, we've talked about the trainer at the university. He holds a virgin entry point for professionals. It's a very, very critical, it's actually very strategic for any country. So let the universities ensure that their curricula has some deep content for professional ethics. Beyond the university, one is the graduate into practice, whether in the public or private sector, you bring in the professional association. And there are several things the professional associations can do. We discussed them. Let those associations take their responsibility, play their roles in ensuring that the graduate, the practicing professional, is constantly reminded that they are accountable, they are held accountable. It is important to ensure that they remain within the expectations, the professional integrity required of them. And we also just echoed the need for the registering entities, the regulatory agencies, to also play their part in constantly reminding professionals that they are actually registered at law, they can be deregistered at law, but not wait to have to use the hammer of either reprimands or suspending or expelling, but engage the professionals with constant reminders that it is important to ensure that we care for the people we work for, and we have a professional code of conduct to mind, so that finally the practicing professional is constantly reminded. We've also seen the need that workshops and seminars which are joined with the professional associations also act as very good platforms for ensuring that professionals are constantly reminded about their responsibilities on matters of professional ethics. Now, what do investigative agencies do? What can they do to ensure that they do help out in this matter of integrity, enhancing integrity and accountability? In Kenya, for instance, we do have, I think DCI does investigations on matters that involve the land sector. They have been very busy lately. We also have the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Agency, EACC. Now, it is useful to appreciate that these agencies have to contend with very complex technical processes within the professional disciplines in the land sector. When you think about what it takes a surveyor to move from his desk to the field, back to the office, produce a product that goes to support registration. That's a very, very long technical. If we talk about the various stages, you are talking about various steps and stages that you go through. Now, look at what it takes a valuer. Sometimes a lot of members of the public actually wonder what it is a valuer does to be able to come up with value. Now you'll notice again it takes quite a lot of work from, looking for data, going to the field to inspect, comparing values of different properties at a particular moment, doing your analysis to see how best to arrive at what you think is the best value in the circumstance. It's a lot of technical work. And the same goes for registration. It's a whole series of steps before you can talk about having registered a property in the name of an entity. So these are very complex processes to tell a general officer who has just gone to DCI or EACC to investigate. So the first thing that one would want to echo is that there is need for very, very good internal capacity within these investigative agencies. If they do not have good capacity internally, it is unlikely they can do effective investigations. So one would want to encourage that, and these agencies are useful because you see, remember we've come from training, we've come to professional associations, we've come to practice, but you'll notice that even with all that gatekeeping, there will always be some excesses. There will always be outliers that some people just simply give up on and say, okay, sasa tumeshindwa. So we need to have investigations with a view to prosecuting where there is complete errors. You've done the best you can to preempt some of these irregularities, but finally you realize it still happened. So it is important to encourage that investigations in technical processes are very thorough. Thorough enough because we observed as we were beginning in part one that corruption is a career killer. And when any professional is associated with it, whether rightly or wrongly, it has such fundamental impact to their career growth. Sometimes it stymies their career growth forever. So it's a career killer, no doubt about it. And we pray, and that's why I would want to encourage ISK to keep on having this kind of discussion, even during events. It's something that every professional should want to avoid. So when we call in investigators where there has been a report of corruption, it is so important that it is completely thorough to either prosecute successfully or absolve completely. Absolve completely so that somebody who was wrongly accused is let to go and can reclaim their career. If rightly accused, then prosecution should follow so that it then acts as a deterrent for others who may be tempted forward. The whole effect of investigation, and good investigation, should be to absolve those who are wrongly accused, but also to ensure that if somebody is indeed guilty of an offense, having completely ignored all those things on professional conduct and done what would be considered criminal, then they are effectively prosecuted. There is a risk of prosecuting weak or unwarranted cases, because doing so has the counter effect of promoting impunity within institutions. You see, you are always going to have people coming over to investigate cases which are bought because they were weak. In fact, people were wrongly accused, and therefore the effect is you must release and you must cease the investigation. You know what will happen is that with time, people will get used to it like it's a joke. And the effect of it is that you will actually, on a totally different track, quite contrary to the initial expectations, promote impunity within an institution. So it is important to encourage our investigative agencies to ensure that when they go in, they do a thorough investigation and they prosecute only the cases that look like they are strong enough, they have evidence, so that then they have the effect of acting as deterrents to any future attempts in similar circumstances. It's also useful for our purposes to remind these agencies that, and let me say this, the impression is always that, particularly in the land sector, that everybody is corrupt. You know, the perception is that it is corruption ridden. It is true, there is a reasonable measure of corruption in the land sector. And not just in Kenya, it's there in many other countries. I know we've had big stories about what happens in other jurisdictions, not just in Kenya. And what I needed to say is that in Kenya and also in other countries in Africa, I've come to appreciate there are very many good professionals, sincere, experienced, very ethical professionals. People, men and women, who can be counted upon anytime there is a challenge that relates to professionalism. So I would want to encourage the investigative agencies to try and create databases where they have information relating to professionals who can be counted on. You know, people with long experience, they have competence, they are ethical, and this has been proven over time. The lawyers, the valuers, the surveyors, the building surveyors, the land managers, the planners, and it's also important to always remember the information communication technology professionals, because many times we forget that ICT is so critical in our processes, that getting to know the profession and even that can be dogged by corruption. So it is and where ICT is dogged by corruption, you have serious trouble. Remember, I talked about a whole raft possibility of even corrupting data or completely wiping out data. Now, if you have an ICT professional who is insincere and professional, you are in serious trouble. So it is important for investigative agencies to be able to have professionals across this discipline: lawyers, valuers, surveyors, building surveyors, planners, ICT, the whole lot of them, who can be relied upon to provide evidence or unpack otherwise very complex technical processes, so that when you prosecute, you don't prosecute the wrong people. You don't heap blame on the wrong people, and you don't investigate the wrong process. You investigate as ought to be. And I think it would be very useful if we were to have this kind of partnership where good professionals are partnering with the anti-corruption agencies, investigative agencies, to bring out thorough, competent, and very effective prosecution. So before we go to the next item, which is close to the last item, we would want to encourage viewers to note that this happens every Friday. This kind of discussion happens every Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Different topics from different professionals from ISK. Today's discussion has been on corruption in the land sector. We are doing part 2. We did part 1 last week. And viewers are encouraged so that we keep interactive to, they can give a view if they think they have a view that they want to make on the discussion. They can comment, or if they have questions or any kind of feedback, to do so on the comment section of the bar that is running on your screen, which is showing ISK contacts of Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, and email and website, so that you can then get responses from me and from the staff in the ISK on your areas of concern. So you are welcome, as we do the last part, to give your comments on this subject. So who are the other critical players that we would want to also profile when we talk about corruption in the land sector? Now, we swing to a very critical cadre of people. Critical because they are the institutional gurus, the institutional wigs, the managers, the senior managers in various institutions. And when we talk about institute, we are talking about lands office, we are talking about Survey of Kenya, we are talking about planning, we are talking about Attorney General's chambers, we are talking about judiciary. It's a whole, it cuts across, because like we said at the beginning, our professionals and the actors who influence actions or inactions in the sector are spread out. So these managers have a very, and let's also remember that in the private sector, we have a lot of outfits that are responsible for young graduates. And they train them right through until they go on their own to practice too. So they are also very critical managers. So even if you are a single office, you are managing just your survey office, your evaluation office, your planning office, this applies. So which is the first critical entry point for these institutions? They think about the young graduates who leave the university, and you'll notice that when he comes in, he doesn't understand your culture, institutional culture. He doesn't understand your values. He doesn't understand what standards you apply on. He may not even understand the internal policy around which you drive your processes. So it is useful. It is useful to mainstream something we call effective induction. I do not know what happened, and I would want to appeal to the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Lands and the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Lands and other aligned ministries and departments, the various heads of departments, to try and do what we call a bit of clawback, because we lost this opportunity of induction. In the past, before you are released to your section, your unit, your department, there would be a very, very deliberate, very proactive, and I would say it was proactive and thorough period through which you are taken through the entire institutional culture, the standards, the values that are expected. What is considered basic of a professional who has entered that institution. And these colleagues, this kind of practice has still value today. I still feel that these young graduates who gets into the Ministry of Lands or into evaluation department or into a planning department, really, and when you think about it, if you look at your days, particularly the senior professionals, if you think about your days when you entered those departments, you were at sea unless somebody held your hand and got you to understand where it is that you had got to, how things are done around there. So let's do purposeful, elaborate induction so that people, graduates, young graduates, are given an understanding of the internal culture, the policy, the culture, just the way you want them to be as they serve. And this applies, I repeat, it applies to both the public and the private sectors. You have a young fellow, even if it's in your private survey office, planning office, valuation office, you haven't told them enough about how you do things, they will do them differently. And it's not because they are willing to do them differently. It's just that they don't understand. So take a bit of time. It may look like time lost for production, but I think it's very good investment. Then for these senior managers, again, there's the whole issue of mentoring. I do not know how one can emphasize the importance of mentoring, but I want to say one thing with complete confidence that most professionals who proceed to become successful in their careers have enjoyed the mentorship of a senior professional who role modeled for them, who held their hand at every stage. For instance, I absolutely clear in my mind, I've got some 3 very senior professionals, much senior than I, who held my hand right from the beginning to date. I will occasionally move into the offices, we have a chat, we do tea, we do lunch, or we simply fall back for a drink. And within the sitting, you get so much historical memory, so much railing back, should you probably, for any reason, have been getting off track, such that I considered it invaluable. It's an invaluable opportunity for any one person. So for institutional managers, I think this aspect needs to be revisited much more strongly. That young graduate, that lady, that young gentleman would benefit a lot if you were to map them onto a senior or middle level professional when they are young in the department, who holds their hand and keeps, acts like their antenna, their star on how best to do stuff. And you see, this also helps us to probably deepen ethics, in the sense that institutions know the people that they can take seriously when it comes to mentoring. So give these kind of senior members, whether they are middle level or senior members in the department, some young fellows to mold. Because when you mold them early, they keep the memory. Then there's the whole issue of continuous training. Again, it is important for managers to appreciate that ethics is not a one-off. If you do not do constant reminders, you will lose. You can lose somebody to the pressures of the world. There are too many temptations at all times, pushing people to do stuff that against the grain. So ethics and laws and procedures are changing. Policy and technology are always changing. So I know we will always have continuous training, some of which is conducted by institutions like ISK. So within that continuous training, please do not ignore ethics, professional ethics. Bring it in as you tell them about the latest equipment, the latest methodology that has come into doing some procedure. The latest law, the latest policy, bring in the issue of ethics, so that it becomes part of the menu that you will always have during in-service training or during continuous training. Then also to deepen the aspect of accountability, it would be useful to ensure that when we have these professionals within our institutions, we appraise them, and particularly in the public service, this is so critical, so that your periodic appraisal, your periodic assessment, so that you are able to tell how well a professional has been performing. Probably it also helps you to determine whether they are due for promotion or for some training. So some of this looks very routine, but incidentally, if you do an evaluation, institutional evaluation, you may realize some of these things are not done. So appraise these guys, and so that people who are keeping their track and doing well can feel like, well, this is noticed, this is accepted, this is appreciated, and as much as possible, also use tools like service charters to monitor adherence to the targets that are given to professionals, because sometimes in most of the technical departments, senior managers will give targets and timelines for various tasks. So and that is normally measured against the service charter, which stipulates what can be done within a particular period, or how long a professional may take to discharge a particular task or service that is required by a member of the public. So use of those targets to measure the performance of professionals also does help. And then finally, it is important to also recognize professionals that look like they're doing well. Reward them where necessary because they are performing well. Just the way you will censor and punish the ones that are not doing well. I think it is useful, so that we encourage professionals to remain on the positive side of this aspect that we are talking about. So to recognize them, reward them, promote them where it happens, and then you censor, you can punish where you think it is going badly. I think this is also important of our senior managers in both the institutions in the public and private sectors. So I think as we round up this topic, we again want to echo the fact that this discussion happens every Friday between 2 and 4 p.m. And it's one of the innovative ways that the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya has devised for ensuring that members, professionals within the association, empower society and also can share their knowledge with other professionals within the association. Just by doing this kind of a live discussion, and today's discussion was corruption in the land sector and the options that can be used to mitigate it. We did part 1 last week, we were doing part 2 today. We want to remind viewers and listeners that they can share their views, they can share their questions, or any feedback whatsoever on the contacts that are scrolling below your screens, so that whether you want to do so by email, you want to do so on the website, whether you want to do a WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook, you can do so at your moment. ISK or I myself will get back to you with answers to whatever you're raising. So as we conclude, we have shared part 1 and part 2. In part 1, we shared the need and demonstrated that technology, particularly computerization, digitization and computerization of technical processes in the various institutions that deal with land governance. For purposes of capturing, disseminating data and providing services, is really encouraged. It does expedite the process. It does eliminate human interface. So it is very useful to adopt technology. We thank the ministry for deepening use of technology. Digitization is in progress in various offices in the ministry. We mentioned that during part 1. We want to hope that digitization and the establishment of the land information management system that is going on will be well done, so that this country can be able to benefit from a technology-driven solutions going forward. But in today's section, part 2, we were also underscoring the fact that this technology-driven solution, which enhances transparency, must be buttressed by non-technical options which help to inculcate ethics and accountability in professionals during their practice, whether in the private sector or the public sector. We have noticed that we have key drivers, key institutions that can help us to enhance integrity and accountability, which it's actually like a proportionate process. You raise accountability and integrity in the performance of services. You equally will be on a proportionate measure reducing opportunities for corruption in those institutions. So the need to enhance accountability and integrity and the actual implementation of opportunities and interventions that reduce corruption will require that we enhance integrity and we enhance accountability. We have noticed that the universities are very critical players and training institutions. We've noticed that professional associations like ISK, Law Society of Kenya, Institute of Planners, and many others, a few others, are very critical for purposes of doing so. We've also seen the role of the regulatory agencies and the investigative agencies. We've also finally just noticed that senior managers in institutions in the private and public sectors are very critical for purposes of ensuring that the professionals working in those institutions have high accountability and integrity levels, which indirectly also speaks to an enabling environment in which corruption is highly reduced. So in conclusion, I want to thank listeners, I want to thank viewers for listening to me, and particularly for our professionals, fellow professionals. I want to exit with the observation that this is a hard subject, and professionals have shied from discussing it. But every time we wonder why government is not probably giving high-level recognition to professionals in our sector, we must also appreciate that to be able to enhance the level of service delivery in the sector, we must address this subject within our own professionals and within the other actors that we notice in part one. So let us mainstream it in our discussions, in our events, in the technical forums that we hold, and in way of bringing it down to the individual level. Let every one of us, professionals, continuously do and very consistently do those small things that help to eliminate and reduce corruption in the land sector in our personal circumstances. It's always very easy to talk about others and complain about others. But I think it behoves every one of us to ask whether we are every moment, wherever we are, whenever we do the things we do, whenever we engage with institutions, doing doing so consistently the things that improve service delivery and reduce corruption in the land sector. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon.
Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.